Hi, welcome to Future Fast. And like always, we have a very special guest today. And before I bring our guest on to the conversation, uh, I appreciate that you guys are following Future Fast, and most of you are downloading, and some of you are even sharing feedback. Really welcome those feedbacks, and we appreciate it. And you're also not subscribing. Majority of you actually only consume, so I urge you to subscribe to it so that you get updates of who's coming next, and that makes it easy. And also another thing is that most of the guests we bring on to, we do it in three parts. So sometimes some people write to us saying that they just saw one, which is where this was talked about. So if you subscribe to it, it just becomes that much easier for you to know every time we release these conversations. So with that, thank you so much once again, and enjoy this conversation. We have today Jessica Lavak. Jessica, thank you so much for making time to be here with us at Future Fast. Welcome to Future Fast. And
Thank you.
Jessica is the executive director of C4. And what C4? We'll hear it from her. But first, we'll start with Jessica's journey. Jessica, once again, welcome to Future Fast.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Nanju.
So please, let's hear your story. Where did it begin?
Okay, so I was born. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to start right at the beginning. No
Sure.
one wants to hear about that. But I guess my professional journey started with education. I kind of always knew I wanted to be a teacher of some sort. I was that nerd child that was like making fake exams that I would then take myself and then grade myself. So I always loved the teaching part of things, teaching class, whatnot. And then after graduate school, I went on and taught at the college level and loved education. But one of the things that was really fascinating to me was, as an educator, I didn't really know how to educate, because after you leave grad school, unless you're going specifically for education, if you go for some other type of focus, once you get into the classroom, you don't really have the skills to be a good teacher. So I spent a lot of time learning how to teach. What is it that makes a classroom teacher effective, or a professor, and how do you really reach the students and make sure that they're gaining the content that you want them to walk away with? So education has been important. I've carried that through my career into what I'm doing now as well within cryptocurrency and Web3, which we'll get into in a little bit. But my journey into crypto began in 2013, which we've talked about before. It was a conference where I spoke about how we can best teach about Bitcoin, and really focusing on universal design for learning, which is a technique for teaching people in general how to learn. So you teach in many different ways so that whoever's in the classroom or whatever is able to understand you. So that would be like visual, auditory. Maybe some people write papers, others would prefer to give a presentation, that kind of a thing. So always been focused on education and then moved into tech.
Well, Jessica, we get called by engineering colleges and universities to come and talk to the students about blockchain technologies. I've been doing it for the last 4 5 years now. And one thing, every time they have told us that please don't talk about cryptocurrency. So you actually got into it to how to teach Bitcoin, right? And here, every time, even now, people say that let's avoid any conversation on cryptocurrency. We don't want to encourage students about cryptocurrency. And funnily, when we finish and we say you want to ask questions, they have, most of the time, very few questions are about blockchain technologies, and most questions are about cryptocurrency. So this is exactly what the colleges and the administration don't want us to talk about, but that is what they're always interested in. Please go ahead.
Well, no, I think it's a fascinating subject, and blockchain technology is interesting. And then cryptocurrency, which is built on blockchain technology, all of that is very interesting. But in most places, there's a hidden agenda or not hidden agenda. And if you're in a classroom, whatever your learning objectives are, you are supposed to go through and do it, and depends on kind of the political climate at the school you're at as well. But I think you're right. Students, the younger generation, really wants to learn about new technology and see how it can make things better. And it's not unheard of historically for older generations to be less interested as a whole, not individuals, in new technology. And so it makes sense that people that are set in their ways maybe at the school don't want to focus on cryptocurrency, or they think maybe it's a Ponzi scheme or whatever else. So they're nervous about their students learning. But that is definitely not everyone. We've got, we'll talk more about this, but at C4, we have educational materials and exams that are used in colleges and universities, where professors are having their students take these exams as part of their curriculum to prove they understand how it works. So it really depends on the who is in charge, I guess, and if they can see past the new breaking news alerts and rather really look at what is innovative in a way that can impact our culture, our society positively.
Yeah, I think much of it is coming from their own ignorance of the whole thing, and also
Mm-hmm.
the fear, because the media, to a great extent, only talks about the negatives of it, right? Every time there's a scam, it just says there's a scam and it's cryptocurrency. Even if the scam has nothing to do with the technology itself, it's a scam where people have been uh, misled, or even the greed driven, right? Or the social engineering aspect. So where technology by itself is uh, far more secure, but the
Yeah.
way the media portrays it, that everybody wants to keep it. And also, of course, all the references to crypto being the preferred currency for underworld business, and those conversations also makes it thing. And we've also unfortunately had some of our government folk talk very negatively. In fact, our central bank, Reserve Bank of India, very senior administrators talking about India should ban crypto, right? I mean, these kind of things send very negative signals to common person, common man, who's first of all not very much aware, and if they hear such things, so
Yeah, it's interesting though, because there are people constantly getting phone calls saying that from their bank, saying that there's something wrong with their account, and they need the person who's getting this phone call to type in certain digits or do whatever to reset their account. And this happens, I mean, daily. It's an ongoing issue with these scammers calling people and people falling for it. And
oh
yet
yes,
we don't blame the banks.
correct, correct.
We're like,
But
oh,
it's
it's
not
just
the
something
same
that's happening.
in the crypto space. They blame the cryptocurrency
Yes,
for
it's
the scam.
exactly.
Right. One more thing, Jessica. I remember your first entrepreneurial stint happened while you were still in school or college. So
All right,
let
sorry, our connection just got interrupted for a second.
yeah. Oh no, I was saying that your first entrepreneurial stint happened while you were at school or college, right? So maybe you should share that journey with our audience.
Yeah, so I love talking about projects that I've tried or others have tried that haven't succeeded. And that might seem weird, but part of growing and learning and becoming who you are today or in the future is about things you've tried to do that have failed. And so being an entrepreneur in any way, I think, is really challenging. You are supposed to have all of these different skills merged into one to be able to get whatever it is you're doing off the ground. And for me, once I left college, my close friend and I decided that we had this brilliant idea, and what we were going to do was help people learn, because that's always kind of been my thing. I'd worked with kids for a long time, and we wanted to help children learn through creating their own stories. So I'd realized at this time, I mean, this was 20 years ago, but I realized that kids were not reading books as much. They were on the computer. And so we had this idea to find a way for kids to be able to go online and create their own story. So kind of like a choose your adventure, but for elementary school children who were able to pick their adventure with pictures, and it had the words attached to it. And then eventually they would get the book sent to them in the mail. And this was in like 2005, I think. And it was a great idea. And actually it exists now, but it was I guess we didn't have all of the skills we needed to do that. One of the big things
Correct.
was web pages for every single thing they had to click through. And so we got the stories written, we had the artwork, and we figured out the printing. And the biggest challenge was the web design. It's not like now where you can go, there's tons of different options. It was page by page that we would have to pay somebody to develop. The cost is astronomical. I tried to learn, did not work.
Right. Today, AI tool does the whole thing.
Yep. Oh yeah. Today, these companies exist and they're successful, but it's weird with being any type of project. A lot of it is about the timing, and the timing didn't work for our skill set. And so it's funny that I took classes on computer coding and I was just frustrated. I felt like I was out of my depth to then move into something that's so focused on.
Jessica, incidentally, a few years back, I met a startup who were doing exactly the same thing, but they were not really using technology to do that. So they were using the technology front to just say that you send your story to us, and we will make a pictorial, a graphic novel or a comic book out of it.
Oh, cool.
And we will print it and send it back to you. So there were a bunch of creative folks. So you send your story, they will probably talk to you to understand how do you want the characterization to be and set up and all that. They send you samples, which is all done digitally. I mean, they do it, mail it to you, you approve it, and then they will do the final production. And then they'll give you a digital copy if you like it only with that. If you want it printed, they will print X number, and that goes with a separate cost. So the digital interface was only to reach anywhere. So,
well, I'm glad that somebody is doing it, because I love the idea of kids still being able to use technology, but to create their own stories and to hopefully get some type of actual physical copy of it with their name on it so that they can feel proud of it. But funny enough, so that project did not work.
You could probably start it again.
I don't think I have the time for that, but I think that it would have helped children, which was kind of the goal. But then I guess 15 or so years later, I actually did publish a children's book with this friend, Lisa, who we started this project.
Who was your partner then? Okay.
Was my partner then. Yeah, we've actually been friends since kindergarten. So a long time. But we wrote a book called Zoe Bug's Traveling Dad. And it's children's book for kids whose parents travel. And it was based upon my father, who traveled when, my whole childhood and adolescence and adulthood, he traveled for work all the time. And we wrote this book kind of modeled after him and his child at home getting postcards, because my dad would send a postcard to me and my siblings every time he went on a trip, pretty much. So I have postcards from all over the world with him telling me what was going on. And I don't know how he did it, because I've traveled for work a bit, and I can't imagine putting in the time to get a postcard and then write it and then mail it. But so it was based on
kind of that was the way we could communicate then. I remember carrying a bunch of postcards when I went for my hiking. And so, in fact, we were in the mountains, so there was no post box. So you obviously can't go and dump it. But every day I would write with the date and keep it. So when we go down to the city, you will dump all the postcards in one go.
Yeah.
But at least back home, you get a story of each of those days. And very limited, because it's just one postcard, whatever it can carry.
Yeah. Well, and some of the postcards were never mailed, or they were mailed from, our hometown, but still, I thought it was pretty impressive to be able to do that. But yes, technology has definitely changed how we can communicate. Although even after cell phones, my dad still continued to send these snail mail postcards to us. But so yeah, the book was based on that, and it was kind of cool to come back around, full circle with the project that I'd wanted to do different, but still in a way I thought went
Maybe
back.
you should share the link if it is on Amazon. If
Oh,
somebody wants
sure.
to look it up, I think it'll be good to
Yeah.
check it out. Sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. One of the other things related to that is the first time around with our book project, we hired someone to do the art. This time around, because technology has advanced, we were able to do the artwork ourselves, or I was. So I basically, I used to work in higher ed, and I left the position that I was in and took a little bit of time off before I got into crypto and blockchain full time. And during that time, I wrote this book, but I also illustrated it. And I am not an artist. So I decided to teach myself how to draw and taught myself how to draw and then taught myself how to use Adobe Illustrator and used Illustrator to figure out how to do all the illustrations for this book. And it was really humbling. I think whenever we learn new technology, it can take us back. And it reminds me very much so of how important education is and the type of learning and how we go about it. And teaching yourself to do something is always, I think, really challenging, but it's also fun, rewarding as you go through. Of course, I'd get frustrated and then I'd figure it out. And then it's like that light that I got it and then become frustrated again and back and forth. But I think that the way technology is moving, we continue to have these new tools that are so fun to use and to learn and to enable me to do something that I loved and create artwork in a way that I could share with others. And I would still not consider myself an artist or an illustrator by any stretch of the imagination, but I was able to do it in this very specific context for something that I believed in. And I would never have been able to do it if it wasn't for technology.
That's so true. One question I've been having in mind, that you have been stressing on education and you being an educator with so much of
Mhm.
a which obviously matters so much for you. But traditionally, like what I was sharing with you, that in India, how the cryptocurrencies persist still, at least at administrator, governance, and education space. Even in US, there is a section of people who still don't approve of cryptocurrency, and also the history of cryptocurrency itself has been an anti-establishment.
Mhm.
So you got started, you said 2014, right? 2013, nearly. I mean, got exposed to it, and then you started your education thing is about 9 years, 8, 9 years old, right? In the crypto space. So how did you come to terms with this technology and the so-called financial system, which was projected as an anti-establishment, anti-banking. Today, of course, we are in an era of CBDC where India has also adopted CBDC. Though
Mhm.
our banking, some of the people talk about banning cryptocurrency while India itself has implemented CBDC. But with this anti-establishment and system and education, how did you come to a balance? How did you find a balance, first of all, for yourself, so that you could further go and take it to the students to get them to balance? Because I think education and education system is very much a part of the organized uh, ecosystem, right? It's part of the establishment, if within quotes, if I can put it that way, and
Mhm.
something which is anti-establishment in quotes. How did you bring that balance, or how did you approach it, first of all?
So I think personally and professionally, it's been different. Personally, when I left higher education, I was an associate dean at the City Colleges of Chicago, and I decided I needed to take a break from administration in an academic environment. And I began looking for other jobs and working on the book. But then at the same time, I started doing some ghostwriting and some other, dabbling within cryptocurrency blockchain, learning about it as I went. And I very clearly remember telling my parents what I was doing, and my mom's expression was like, I mean, she's like, wait, you're not going to go back into higher education? And I said, no, not right now. I think I'm really interested in this. I'm having fun. I want to, play around and see. And I really don't think she knew what to make of it. I'm not sure if she does now, 7 years in full time, but it was something that I think a lot of people were questioning, like, why would I move from a very kind of standard acceptable profession where it's rooted in tradition, and most people, I mean, I think maybe some people don't think that college education is as important as maybe they once did, but either way, it's a very acceptable, socially acceptable journey to take, to be, in education in that way. So when I left and started to, as we say, fall down the crypto rabbit hole, there were a number of people that were very surprised by what I was doing. And I still think that there's a stigma to it. But for me, when I first got in, the perspective that the people who I knew who were already working in the space, they introduced me to this. It was all about banking the unbanked. It wasn't focused on enterprise blockchain or how we can make money. It was very much focused on, there are people out there that don't have access to traditional banking systems. These individuals are at a disadvantage. If you want to be a part of the large community of people who are trying to make things better for those people who don't have access to traditional finance, like someone like I do in the United States, like, this is a way to do good. And so from my perspective, it was less about the enterprise side of things and much more focused on it as a public good. And I heard stories from people who, grew up in Greece and then had the financial downfall. And, I've heard so many different stories of how it's impacted people positively, that was really my focus. And I didn't see it from an investment perspective or for financial gains. And I didn't even really, I guess, think about the digital gold and how it would become something, a get rich, not quick, but could be a get rich quick opportunity for some, because I was so focused on the other side of it. So when the, I guess, tables have turned, it's become a bit more focused on making money and exchanges, and there's been sort of multiple sides to this. It's now an industry. I never would have expected that I would fall into somebody teaching about, financial literacy or anything about how Bitcoin works as, the first peer-to-peer system, things like that. That didn't really occur to me at first, and I've fallen into it. Now I really do enjoy that part of it. But if you told me 10 years ago that I'd be dealing and teaching
Probably
about
you
something,
won't have got into it as much.
no, I would have been like, what do you mean enterprise blockchain? Why would I want to do something with enterprise? But then I guess my entry into it was about helping others. It still is my focus, but I also see how it can benefit, blockchain can benefit enterprises and businesses and do a lot of things other than just banking the unbanked. But that is my original kind of, where it got to me.
Do you want to share what kind of books or podcasts that you follow? Where you get updates on what's happening in the space, and also any individuals or entities that you keep track of? Probably that would
Sure.
be of interest.
Yeah, so I think there's so much information out there now that it can be really difficult to figure out what's a source of truth. There are a lot of companies that do internal education, and their education, obviously, is geared towards making sure that people understand how their products work. So getting unbiased information, I think, in any industry is difficult. I definitely think it's difficult within cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to find information that is not geared towards a product or has product placement. But so I would say Andreas Antonopoulos is kind of the way that I started to learn about cryptocurrency, the Internet of Money books, and mastering Bitcoin, mastering Ethereum, mastering the Lightning Network, all of those. Also, Pamela Morgan has a lot of educational materials out there. She's got a book called Crypto Asset Inheritance Planning, and they're both board members for C4, the nonprofit organization that I work with. But also, this might seem strange, but the best type of information for me is the fact that we have committees for all of our content. So at C4, we've got exams, certifications, and then we also have educational materials, and we curate this from our committee members. So we have committee members that are in, all different walks of life from different places around the world who have a focus on this technology from different angles. And I learned so much in these committee meetings. And we do share that information out through our prep books and whatnot. But I was on our certified Ethereum professional call yesterday, and someone just said, hey, what's new in Ethereum? And then it was just a conversation about what's going on. We talked about account abstraction and other things. And so I think having trusted people who aren't trying to shill their product or project, but are just explaining how something in the space works. So that's been really helpful. We also do live streams at C4, and I learned so much from our guests. Yesterday, we just had a live stream where we talked about taxes and trading and how important it is to whatever jurisdiction you're in to be aware of it. And even just talking about, no one wants to talk about taxes, let's be honest, but listening to them and talking about it, I learned a lot. Even though I've been being paid in crypto for years, it was still a good conversation. So I'd say experts in the space who aren't trying to shill their projects really is the way to go. But the reason C4 actually does educational materials is because of that very issue. So I'm not sure if we've talked about this previously, but when I first entered the cryptocurrency space, I was in it for about 2 years before I became the executive director at C4. And we were announcing that I was becoming the executive director at our blockchain training conference, which was in 2019. And so I'd been in the space for 2 years, thought I had a good handle on it, was working for Andreas Antonopoulos at the time. So I was learning from, one of the great educators in the space. And I had to take the certified Bitcoin professional exam, which we'll get into and explain more about that in a bit. But I had to prove that I understood how Bitcoin worked. And I was so terrified to take this exam because, first of all, there was a study guide, but not, direct material. So I was pulling things from everywhere to try to, be able to pass this test. And I ended up passing it. But my concern was, is the information I'm pulling from all of these different sources accurate? How do I know if it's accurate? Is it biased? I don't know. And then also, what if I don't pass? That was my concern, because I thought I'm going to have to tell my new bosses, the board of directors, that I need another coupon code to take the exam. Luckily, I did pass, like I said, but there was some concern there and fear. And when I took the exam and passed it, what was interesting wasn't just, okay, good, I can tell the board that, I actually get this, but it was more for me, like, oh, I do get this. It's not just me hoping or thinking. It really brought a lot of confidence to me to be able to prove that I understood the technology, which is why our certifications started in the first place, because it's hard to really have that confidence that you understand something, or to prove to others that you understand something without some type of tangible proof of that. And they're starting to be now, but they're previously, it's not like you could go and get a degree in Bitcoin. So we had to have some way to prove that we understood it.
All right. Well, I'll follow up with you to get those reference links that could be shared with our audience and listeners. And you can find it right below this podcast, along with other links to follow Jessica and her work, and also C4, of course, which she talked about. We will get more in depth into what exactly C4 does, what Jessica does with that, and what kind of work is happening around that space in the next part of our podcast. And till then, do follow Future Fast and do share this conversation, whoever you think will appreciate it. Because I think it's very important that if you come to the next part, you know where she comes from, so it becomes that much easier for you to connect with. So thank you so much, Jessica, once again. Thank you so much for making time to share your journey with us. Really appreciate it. And we'll come back to talk about P4 and the work that you're doing around that. And
Awesome.
till then, thank you once again.